All right, so Antonio and I did a presentation on whether on Nigeria in relation to communism. So first, we tried to look into Nigeria and the history of communism. And so essentially, before the advent or the appearance of the colonial era, the economic system in Nigeria was sort of communist. So essentially, what would happen was the head of the commune or the tribe would essentially divide the land up equally, and the land would be owned and was held in trust for the people. And so what would happen was the land would be equally divided, and each family would be in charge of the section that they were assigned. And so this would often create a surplus of agriculture, and that would either be divided amongst the families or the head of the leaders, or either reused in the next planting season. However, this system wasn't entirely communist because competition did exist between families. They were trying to be better than one another and try to move up in the socioeconomic status, and that was because the families and the head of the leaders who were higher up in the socioeconomic status would usually more directly benefit from the surplus of agriculture, and so it really wasn't exactly a classless society. There was still a socioeconomic class, and there wasn't exactly free competition, but it was sort of communist in the sense that the land would be shared by the people, and so would the surplus. So, what institutions, policies, or beliefs of Marxism have been adopted or integrated? Really, none have been adopted, and so that brings up the question: why has communism not been adopted? And that's large in part due to British imperialism. And essentially, what happened was the British came into Nigeria and drew very poorly drawn borders. And what happened was this caused ethnic clashes in within Nigeria. So a lot of the rival tribes were pinned against each other, and that really has played a huge part in Nigerian history. As even in current day, the tribes are constantly fighting with one another, and they really have not been able to come together and try to focus on one form of collectivization and one form of and form like a classless society. They always want to fight with one another and always want to better the other tribe. There really isn't a feeling of national unity. And in addition, communism is viewed as a Western form of government, and the Nigerian people and many terrorist organizations that operate in Nigeria really do reject communism because of the fact that it is Western, and they really do not place too much emphasis on Western values. So, how much state control is over the markets and private property? Up above are two essentially definitions that define privatization and marketization. And so the thing in Nigeria is a big portion of economy is related to the oil, and the oil is largely controlled by the state. And what happens is private markets is small compared to the public sector, and essentially this explains a thing that happened in Nigeria, which is essentially that corrupt politicians buy off stakes in oil companies and they continue to benefit from the oil revenue. And what this does is it's called the resource trap theory. And essentially, what happens is the Nigerian government does not need to tax the people to generate revenue because of the fact that oil is already giving them a vast amount of wealth, and so that not only prevents democratization, but it also it then what happens is that the Nigerian government does not need to tax the people, and essentially they do not have to listen to what the Nigerian government says, and they continue to just feed off and continue to use the natural resources to obtain personal wealth. So the inequality index and democratic progress index. So according to the book, there was a survey and within Nigeria, and the people were given an option to choose between a good democracy or a strong economy. And almost 59% of them chose a strong democracy, whereas 41% chose a strong economy. And essentially, what that shows you is that democratization is slowly occurring, and really communism really has not developed at all. And in addition, many as I stated before, many terrorist organizations such as Boko Haram really do reject Western values of government. So, although democracy is slowly progressing, the economy is still one of the major influences in the Nigerian culture, which again is controlled by the state. So in terms of inequality, there's very low human development index. As you can see, the chart on the right essentially shows how the components of Nigeria's HDI. If you look at the human inequality coefficient, it's about 337.5%, which again is very low. And the gender rank in terms of the whole world, out of 142 countries, they're 137th, which just reiterates the point that Nigeria is not very well developed. Thank you.
Very well said.
Will you stop recording.